Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and we have something insanely weird to take a look at today. We have some crazy alternate dimension, weird Papo-ish sort of bootleg Tyrannosaurus? I guess, I don't know, I spotted this thing on Aliexpress and I thought it looked so crazy and weird that I absolutely had to pick one up. And I will say, having it here in hand, it's pretty much exactly what I expected. It is a big pile of rubbish. Okay, I have definitely seen worse, but it looks as though they kind of took the Papo running Rex and just retooled it a lot, gave it some crazy ridges around the back, running down the course of the back, and potentially gave it an entirely different tail, and then just painted it up and threw it out there for us to take a look at. But I thought it was so weird and different looking that I really wanted to show you guys here on the channel and throw it up here for review. So let's go ahead, jump straight to a closer look right now. So looking at the head sculpt, it is about as messy of a head sculpt as it gets. You can definitely see a very strong resemblance to the Papo T-Rex, who I would imagine this was probably bootlegged from. However, the detail of it is pretty much terrible. Like, you can't even remotely resemble the actual skin texture of this one in comparison to the Papo Rex, because there is a very large difference. This one just looks super sloppy. The sculpt and detail just looks very faded as far as how vibrant it looks on the Papo version in comparison to this one, and the paintwork is really ugly on this one as well. The figure does have an articulated jaw, which is a plus, but you can see the paintwork inside the mouth as well is very sloppy. Like, the tongue is only partially painted, and the teeth are just all over the place as far as the paintwork goes. There's no consistency, and it's really sloppy. You can see the insides of the teeth are just totally ignored. There's no paintwork there at all. And the tongue, again, you can see areas that are just blatantly missed as if they just did not care. And it's also an obnoxiously thick and ugly looking paint application for the inside of the mouth. But the jaw does work okay, kind of. It's a little loose. It works decent until you get to, like, right, where is it? There it is. That fell out right there. So it doesn't work great, but it works okay. You can see the eyes are painted with a yellow, given a black pupil, and they kind of appear to be glossed, but it's tough to really tell because the entire figure has a glossy look up here on the back, so it's tough to tell if there is an actual gloss coat applied to the eye or if that's just the glossy appearance to the paint. Maybe they just sprayed a gloss coat over top and now everything sort of has a glossy look to it up here. As far as the coloration that we have here, we have a dark green, and then we have a black that borders around the eye, and then we have a dark gray here for the underside, and that's really about it. We don't really have too much going on paint-wise with the figure. As you move back here into the neck, you can see again, the detail is there, but it's super washed out. But we also start with these really weird ridges that pick up here on the back of the neck. Two of them are actually broken off of this figure. They must have broke in transit. But you can see we've got a few ridges right there, then they taper off, then pick back up here in the mid-back area, and then taper off, and then pick back up again here in the tail area, and we have a pretty good run of them right here before they taper off and disappear permanently. As you can see, we come back up here. The arm is up here in a very strange position, almost like it's trying to itch itself. I don't know why they put the arm right there. I feel like that's a very strange spot for it, but that's regardless the place that it is. I thought maybe initially it had articulated arms and I can move that down, but no, the arm really is stuck in that positioning. You can also see a very visible seam here. It's maybe not too visible right now on the camera, but I can see it in hand. It's like very, very visible running the whole way through. It's in fact even worse over here. You can really see it. And I believe the figure is hollow, so that would probably be the reason for that seam. It's because it's a hollow figure. It would have probably have been just put together like this. And you can see the paintwork again on both sides isn't really all that great, as we only have that one tone of green, the dark black, and the dark gray. And they kind of do try to highlight some areas, like you can see a little bit of the black applied to the stomach region, and then down here in some of the muscle definition of the leg. But it's not very well done, I will say that. The underside, without question, looks and resembles the Papo Rex a lot. Like, once you actually get here on the underside of the dinosaur and just look up at it, you can't see the differences with the tail or the ridges. You can really see that it resembles the Papo Rex. So I think if there was ever any evidence needed that this is a bootleg of the Papo Rex, we've got it right there. But as we lead out into the tail, you can see that this one has a very big curved and thick tail, which is not from the Papo Rex. So this one has obviously been strongly customized by whoever, created this figure. The tail is very, very different in comparison to the Papo Rex. I actually kind of like the tail, and the detail of the tail isn't terrible. Like, it looks probably nicer than anywhere else on the figure, which makes me think that the tail might be the only real original part aside from these ridges. And that also makes me think that they could have probably done a better job if they would have just created the figure from scratch as opposed to bootlegging a Papo Rex and then really washing out the detail on the figure. The foot sculpt also looks terrible. You can see that the detail is super, super washed out. The paintwork is really ugly, really glossy. There is black applied to the nails, but it really looks like they didn't care. It's very sloppily applied. You can see the dew claw is totally missed as far as the paintwork goes, and even some of the sides of the nails have also been missed, so you can see that on the opposing foot. But once we go over here, you can see the obnoxiously glossy looking greenish coloration. So the figure, sculpt wise, is interesting. Paint wise, it's horrible, and the detail on the majority of the figure is also quite terrible until you actually get into the tail. And I think the detail of the tail is a little bit more vibrant than you see elsewhere, but definitely one of the least impressive dinosaur figures I think I've ever taken a look at here on the channel, and that is deservedly so due to it being a bootleg and using many parts of the Papo Rex to create this, but at least they did give it its own unique charm. If this were just a straight up bootleg, I would not have reviewed it here on the channel because I try never to just promote bootlegs, but due to this one having a lot of differences to it, it's almost like a custom sort of bootleg-ish thing, so I figured it was worth looking at. So it's definitely not a very good figure. You can see that the detail is washed out severely throughout. It does have a unique appearance to it, which, I do actually kind of like the uniqueness of the figure and the kind of off-the-wall crazy look of it, but overall I definitely think that it is not really worth picking up. One of the few redeeming factors of this figure, though, is that it was actually quite cheap. I think it was like $6 or $7, so that's not too bad. But you really get the type of quality that you pay for when it comes to this figure. And at the same time, it actually balances, which is really surprising because being a bootleg, I don't expect figures like this to really balance quite often, and this one does sort of. You can see it's standing right now at least, but for a size on the figure, for a length, you are looking at about 10.5 inches or about 27 centimeters or about 26.5, closing in on 27. And then for a height, you are looking at about the 4.5 inches or 11.5 centimeter area. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovosaurus, and Robert Muldoon from the Mattel Jurassic World toy line in comparison to our weird, crazy, sort of a Papo-ish bootleg thing. And you can definitely see that the size is similar, actually, I would say, to the original Papo Running Rex. I'm not entirely sure if it's exactly the same size or just similar, but you can straight away see such a huge difference in quality between this version here and the actual Papo Rex back there, just showing you a huge drastic difference as far as the overall appearance when it comes to vibrant detail on an actual Papo compared to this hideous abomination right here before us. And then for a second comparison, here is one of the Papo Running Tyrannosaurus figures in comparison to our sort of a bootleg version, but actually looking at it here in comparison, there are a lot of differences between the two. Like straight away, you can see there's a tilt to the Papo's head. There's not much of a tilt, a slight tilt to this newer Crazy version, but you can also see that just generally there is a drastic difference to the detail of the figure. And the shape of the body is also really quite different when it comes to like the back. Like if you look at the shape of the back in comparison to the Papo version, they're definitely really quite different. But there's some very obvious similarities like the shape of the ribs right there, the positioning of the arm, as well as the positioning of the legs, even though this newer bootleg version here has a really warped foot. But you can see the tails are also very drastically different, which is one of the areas that we can significantly see is different from the original version, as well as those ridges running along the back. So there is quite a bit of difference, and I at least can appreciate the fact that they didn't just straight up bootleg the Papo Rex, but they've clearly taken some aspects of the Papo Rex into creating this really weird figure. So this definitely is not a very good figure. I don't know what company makes this. I have absolutely zero idea. There was no evidence of a company when it came here, when it arrived. There was like no tag or anything like that. I don't think there was a company associated with it on the listing on Aliexpress, but I've seen it floating around there for a little while, and it was so unique with the appearance of those ridges running down the back and everything that I've kind of been like on the fence of buying it just because it's so weird looking, and I do enjoy kind of weirder off the wall dinosaur figures from time to time, and I spent quite a while debating on actually picking it up. And eventually I pulled the trigger on it because, again, it's so weird and I thought it might be something fun to add to my collection. But I will say that in hand, I pretty much regret the purchase. I regret the idea of buying it because it's really bad looking. Like, the detail is super sloppy throughout. It's really washed out and just looks ugly overall as far as the detailing standpoint goes. The paintwork is even worse than the actual detailing on this. It's super glossy, super ugly, and is not applied in a very nice natural way. And in fact, I can't even pick out one area of the paintwork on this figure that I could say, well, that looks all right. No, it looks terrible everywhere. The paint is super inconsistent as far as the placement goes. The mouth is just horrendous as far as the paintwork goes. And just generally, it's an ugly figure as far as the paintwork goes, but also most of the detailing. The only area on the figure that has decent looking detail would be the tail, and I don't know if that tail is a totally original sculpt on their part, or if that's something that's also been taken from another figure and just kind of applied to this one. I'm not too sure, but I can say that the detail out there on the tail does look pretty decent, but the detail elsewhere just looks really washed out and ugly. Maybe if it had a repaint, it could look interesting because of the crazy ridges down the back and everything. It's very unique and different than most dinosaur figures, but I wouldn't really put any money on that bet. I think either way it's going to end up looking pretty horrendous overall. So I will include a link in the description if you really want to torture yourself by picking one of these up, where you can buy it where I purchased it on AliExpress. But I can say without question that I don't recommend it. It's a pretty ugly figure and pretty much a waste of money to pay like $6 or $7 for this. It's not worth that price, and really should be something that you find in like a dollar bin somewhere. So again, the link will be in the description if you really want to waste a few bucks, but otherwise, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.